Hi, this is a conversation with Anne Tunstall, and she's a scientist. And Anne, how do we get the medicines that we use?
Well, someone has an idea to help to cure a particular disease or indication. And this is nowadays, because of course in the past a lot of medicines are already known and had been used, but nowadays someone will have an idea to treat a certain condition, often because enough becomes known about that disease to explain why it happens. So if you think of something like Alzheimer's that is almost there but not quite, in another few years when people really understand where Alzheimer's comes from, then scientists, chemists can think of ways to stop that sort of thing. So when the idea of coming up with a chemical to help cure arrives, the chemist will make the chemical, and then it goes through a whole battery of tests to show that it's safe. And these would first be done in animals. And then it would move on to human testing to be sure that it was safe and that it worked for the condition it was supposed to.
Well, what are the major obstacles that are faced by people who develop medicines?
Time and money, ultimately. Time and money, assuming that it's a good idea in the first place, so that the product does work, the drug will work, and is reasonably safe. Showing that it's safe, or that you know what its safety profile looks like, and showing that it works can be a very arduous and expensive process, both in the United States, which I'm most familiar with, and other countries. It's complicated. It involves a complicated mix of knowing medicine, knowing chemistry, knowing biology, knowing toxicology. And there are a lot of questions that have to be asked and answered along the way. So ultimately amounts to time and money to ask the right questions and get the right answers.
That considered, what are the major boosts of innovation and discovery of new medicines? Not discovery, but creation of new medicines?
Right. Everything starts with a good understanding of what a particular disease or illness is caused by. So as the field of science and medicine move, and more information is gathered as to what causes something, the next step after that then is, what could you do to counter that? So as medicine is advancing, and I could give an example of cancers, 50 years ago, there wasn't really a very good understanding that cancers can be quite different, and the causes of the cancers can be quite different. And now over time, especially with a lot of the genetic testing that goes on, scientists are realizing different cancers are caused by different things. And once you know that, once you know the cause, you then can start developing chemicals that can attack a particular cause. So, there's been certainly a breakthrough in cancer treatments in the last 10 years, and there will continue to be over the next few years, as scientists can take that knowledge and then apply ways of affecting the disease.
In which ways is different or similar the process of approving new medical equipment to the process of approving new medicines?
Well, let's see. So medical equipment, which would be considered as a class medical devices. So equipment could be anything from an EKG machine that's just attached to somebody externally to a product that might be implanted in you. Even in maybe the most complicated kind of product, like an implant, let's think something like a heart implant, to help pace your heart. You'd have to worry about what it's going to do in the body, and you'd have to make sure the electronics are hardy and that they're going to work. The questions that arise from evaluating a medical device are just not as complicated as for drugs. From most devices, you can think of them mechanically, you can think of them electrically, and you can think of ways to test how well they do over time. Drugs are quite different. You can give someone a drug, and I might react differently than you. And the understanding of what happens when I take it, where it goes, how my body metabolizes it, what happens to the parts that are metabolized, where do they go? They could go anywhere in your body. A medical device is located in one place, and certainly things can come from it that could go elsewhere, but it's pretty easy to test if that's going to happen. Drugs are meant to go all over the place and to work in some particular places. So they can do so much good, but they could do so much bad, and it's not always easy to test the bad. as it would be with a medical device. So I think it's just complexity of the problems that could come from them. With drugs, it's much higher than devices.
In this field of the producing new medicines, what makes you happy?
Goodness. Showing that one works, of course. Showing that it works and can help people. Showing that it works and that it can help people and that you have developed it in an intelligent way so you can get it out to people sooner rather than later. It is good, very good satisfaction.
What would you say is a good environment for developing new medicines and new devices?
In what sense? Are you...
In the broadest sense, I mean, another way to put it is, why is it that in some countries are famous because people develop medicines, and in other countries there's nothing of that kind.
Right. Well, it takes two things actually. So first, someone has to have the idea, and has to have the appropriate forethought as well as the scientific knowledge to translate an idea of perhaps why a disease is to what you could do to counter it. So, those countries that are known academically and scientifically are those where you tend to see some of the best innovation coming out of. I think of some places, the United States, we've got such a large infrastructure of scientists. And then other smaller countries that you might not think of, like Sweden, for example. They've got quite a wonderful education network there. Quite a few wonderful scientists. So it's a small country you may not hear of, but many good ideas come out of there. So that's the first thing, is where is there scientific knowledge to be able to translate a disease to something that can take care of it or help cure or mitigate it. But that's only half it. The other half is having the knowledge and the resources to take that idea through the testing that's required to show that it's safe and that it works, and have it be on the market. Some countries may be good at the front end, but perhaps not have the internal resources, typically for private companies to take that idea forward and take it through the full pathway. The usual rule of thumb for a new drug is that it takes about 12 years to develop, and anywhere from $300 million to $1.5 billion, really. So it's a major investment, and there aren't that many companies that can put that kind of money into it. Such a long-term payoff. The time value of money. It's maybe not the safest place to put your money. Another fact that you often hear is that it's about 10% of the drugs that are first tested in people that get on the market at the end. So, if you're talking about trying to create a company or have investments that won't be returned until about 12 years later, and that when they're returned, you've got a 1 in 10 chance, at most, of having your money back. Otherwise, you have nothing. It can be a hard sell, I think, to gather the resources. And maybe as we're talking, I'm thinking of a third thing. Not only do you have to have the idea and the money to develop it, there's got to be a potential payoff in the end. So if you can bring something to market, yet you're in a country, for example, that doesn't have the resources to buy it, then you're not going to get your money back either. So maybe I guess it's the combination of those three now that I'm thinking about it.
Are you for or against intellectual property?
Strongly for intellectual property. Hard to imagine why someone would take the risk in developing drugs unless there were some payoff at the end. I think it's the rare person that doesn't want to help others and doesn't want to help develop drugs because it can help others. But it's also the rare person who wants to do it and not have some sort of financial feedback as well. So I think without property rights, I'm not quite sure how you could do that.
If a student approaches you and asks something like Dr. Tunstall, what would be your advice if I want to work on development of new medications? What would you recommend?
Well, you can attack it from two angles, really, depending on a student's interest. One could be the science side of it, of course. there are a variety of fields that one could study that could lead you into pharmaceuticals. Anything from chemistry to various branches of biology. My background actually is in medical engineering, and then I've had to learn a lot of the biology and chemistry along the way of the medical side of things. So that's certainly one area, one way of becoming involved in the industry. Another would be from the commercial side. If someone had an interest in finance or an interest in marketing, certainly that's an important part of the business. So either of those two avenues could get you there.
Well, thank you very much for sharing these ideas with us, and thank you too.